She was like a wild animal. And at that age, to think that the person that you're supposed to love and trust the most is the person that just tried to you. She the servants, she the children, and nobody wanted to work with her anymore. She was declared an unsuitable candidate to go through social services, and so she went to Nevada where she had connections.
So this was like a private purchase?
Yes, that we were purchased.
Joan Crawford couldn't have biological children, so she found another way to build her perfect family. But purchasing children from illegal baby brokers was just the beginning of the horror. Christina was Joan's first acquisition in 1939. For years, she played the role perfectly, the obedient daughter in matching outfits. But when Christina started developing her own thoughts and preferences, Joan saw this natural development as defiance that needed to be crushed.
They couldn't have.
When did trouble begin for little Christina?
I think around the time I was about 4, maybe 5, but no later than that. When I started to become a person, when I started to want to say, well, I'd like it this way, or I don't want that, or I like this.
That moment of independence at age 4 marked the start of years of escalating. The punishments grew more violent, more psychological, until one night when Christina was 13, Joan crossed a line that nearly ended her daughter's life.
And one time, you know, she tried to kill me. I mean, I am positive that if there was not somebody in the house, she would have killed me. She knocked me over, she was choking me. I thought I was going to die.
How old were you?
13.
Joan Crawford had tried to murder her own child. But what makes this story even more shocking is that it wasn't happening in secret. Hollywood insiders knew exactly what was going on.
It was no secret in the Hollywood community that as children we were abused. We had many servants who tried to intervene on our behalf, and they were fired.
An entire industry chose to protect a movie star instead of the children she was destroying. This is how Christina Crawford finally exposed that conspiracy of silence. Before the industry helped conceal her crimes as a mother, it first had to help her become one. By the late 1930s, Joan Crawford's career was in a tailspin. Despite a decade as a top-tier star, she was publicly branded box office poison, a label that terrified a woman who had clawed her way out of a desperate, impoverished childhood. While a stunning comeback in 1939's The Women put her back on top, the professional crisis had exposed a personal one. She had the wealth and the will of iron, but after a string of devastating miscarriages with her then-husband, actor Franchot Tone, she was forced to confront the one thing her power couldn't command, a child. For a woman pathologically obsessed with control, this biological failure was an intolerable wound to her ego. The official path to motherhood, however, was a closed door. In the socially rigid world of the 1940s, state-regulated adoption agencies in California had a very specific template for the ideal parent, and Joan Crawford fit none of it. She was a multi-divorce, single woman with a demanding, notoriously public career. Agencies wanted stable, traditional two-parent households, preferably with the mother staying at home. Crawford's life, governed by studio contracts and volatile Hollywood romances, was the antithesis of this ideal. Her carefully managed image couldn't hide the perceived instability of her reality from social workers. She was formally and repeatedly rejected, deemed an unsuitable candidate to be a mother by the very system designed to create families. But Joan Crawford did not take no for an answer. If the legitimate world wouldn't give her what she wanted, she would turn to the illegitimate one. This led her to the shadowy, back-alley world of private adoptions, a world of cash-in-hand deals, falsified birth certificates, and immense legal risk. Her primary contact was a woman named Georgia Tan, the seemingly respectable operator of the Tennessee Children's Home Society. In reality, Tan was a monster, running a veritable black market for babies, which she sourced by coercing, lying to, or outright stealing newborns from poor single mothers, often telling them their child had died in childbirth. For wealthy, desperate clients like Crawford, Tan offered a discreet, off-the-books pipeline to motherhood, greased by bribes to judges and doctors. But as her daughter Christina later explained, this wasn't adoption, it was a business transaction.
She was declared an unsuitable candidate to go through social services, and so she went to Nevada where she had connections.
So this was like a private purchase.
Yes, that we were purchased,
But
all
she
of us.
was
Purchased, sourced through fixers in states like Nevada, where a lax residency laws and a culture of discretion made it easy to arrange paperwork for a price. Crawford didn't just want one child to fill a void. She wanted to construct a perfect family, a living, breathing PR campaign to soften her public image and project a maternal warmth she didn't possess. She needed a son and a daughter, the archetypal American dream. After acquiring Christina, she went shopping again, and again, and again.
And actually there were 5 of us. We were all bought through private brokers.
Oh, so it was nobody, well, she never gave birth.
No.
5 children procured over the years to complete a picturesque family tableau for the photographers at Photoplay magazine. But this criminal foundation was dangerously unstable. These weren't clean, legal adoptions where parental rights were irrevocably severed. The children were, in a sense, stolen goods, and sometimes the original owners came looking for them. This happened spectacularly with the first boy Joan adopted, initially named Christopher. His birth mother, a young Texas waitress named Elizabeth Ann Holliday, was told her baby had died. When she discovered he was alive and living with a movie star, she fought back, creating a public relations nightmare for Crawford. The facade of the happy home was about to be shattered by reality.
The second child, who was a boy, lived with us for about 9 months, and his birth mother came and got him. And it was a very traumatic occasion with sirens and everything, and I hid in a closet.
Hiding in a closet while police sirens blare. This was the terror underpinning Joan Crawford's manufactured family. Not a home, but a holding cell where your presence was conditional and your siblings could be reclaimed like overdue library books. The scandal was a profound humiliation for Joan, but she simply returned to the market and purchased another boy, whom she also named Christopher. She had gotten what she wanted, children to pose with for the cameras, accessories to her fame. But for the children themselves, the purchase was just the beginning of the horror. The real price would be paid every single day behind the closed doors of the mansion that money had bought, but that love would never build. Joan used to parade Christina in matching outfits, stage glowing photo ops for the fan magazines, and curated an image of domestic bliss. But the doll she had adopted was becoming a person. And for Joan, a person had opinions, a person had needs, a person could be disobedient. The performance of motherhood began to crack the moment her co-star started improvising. Christina herself marks the change not by a single event, but by the dawning of her own consciousness. As soon as she began to exist outside of Joan's script,
They couldn't have.
When did trouble begin for little Christina?
I think around the time I was about 4, maybe 5, but no later than that. When I started to become a person, when I started to want to say, well, I'd like it this way, or I don't want that, or I like this.
the trouble started. Joan's obsession with control, the very thing that propelled her career, now turned inward, transforming her pristine Brentwood mansion into a miniature police state. Rules were absolute and bizarrely specific. Dresses had to be hung a certain way. Food had to be finished, no matter how long it took. Absolute quiet was demanded when Joan was resting. A child's simple preference or a minor mistake was interpreted as a personal betrayal, an act of defiance that required a swift, severe correction. The punishments escalated from sharp words to something far more terrifying.
Yes, and
And what kind of hitting? What kind of abuse? I mean, was it a slap on the hand?
no. It was with objects. It was with
Objects? Oh, a paddle?
hairbrushes, and the famous hangers, of course. It was very violent.
This wasn't just about discipline. This was about rage. And that rage was often fueled by alcohol. The most dreaded moments in the Crawford household were what Christina called the night raids. Joan, often drunk and furious about some unknown slight from her day at the studio, would storm through the house in the dead of night. Her target was almost always a sleeping Christina.
She would get very upset in the middle of the night, and she would start doing something. Sometimes she'd haul me out of bed and make me clean the bathroom floor.
Imagine it, a small child ripped from a deep sleep, blinded by the bathroom lights, forced onto her hands and knees to scrub floors for hours, while her mother, the most famous woman in the world, loomed over her drunk and menacing. These weren't lessons in cleanliness. They were rituals of psychological terror designed to break a child's spirit and remind her who was in control. The beautiful home celebrated in magazines became a place of profound fear, where the monster under the bed was the one who tucked you in. The horrors of the Brentwood mansion were not a perfectly kept secret. In a town built on gossip and whispers, Joan Crawford's private life was less a fortress and more a glass house, with an ever-rotating audience of insiders peering through the windows. That carefully built image of the perfect mother was for the public, and the public only. Within the closed circles of Hollywood, the truth was an open secret, passed around at cocktail parties and in studio backrooms. The performance of motherhood was for the fans. The reality of the was for the help, the friends, and the executives who understood that a clean brand was more valuable than a child's well-being. The most chilling part of the story isn't just what happened behind closed doors, but how many people knew and chose to keep them locked. The first witnesses were the staff. The cooks, maids, nannies, and gardeners were a constant presence in the children's lives, and they saw everything. They saw the aftermath of the night raids. They saw the fear in the children's eyes when Joan's car pulled into the driveway. They saw the bruises hidden by long sleeves. For a time, they were the only buffer between the children and their mother's rage. But in the Crawford household, compassion was a fireable offense. Speaking up, offering a kind word, or trying to shield a child from a beating was an act of defiance that got you fired on the spot. The revolving door of domestic staff wasn't just a sign of a demanding employer, it was a way to purge the house of witnesses.
First of all, it was no secret in the Hollywood community that as children we were abused. We had many servants who tried to intervene on our behalf, and they were fired.
The circle of people who knew went beyond the paid staff and right into Joan's own social life. These were her peers, her friends, her romantic partners, people who, in theory, had the status to confront her. They saw the rigid, obsessive behavior at dinner parties. They heard the sharp, cruel tone she used with Christina, and some, driven by concern or a sense of decency, tried to step in. They would gently suggest she was being too hard on the children or question a particularly harsh punishment they had witnessed. Their reward was a terrifying display of Joan's rage. She would turn on them with the same cold fury she reserved for her children, accusing them of interfering, of daring to question her as a mother.
There were numerous of her personal friends, her dates, I think even some of her husbands, who tried to intervene on our behalf and were told flat out that it was none of their business.
But the biggest enabler was the studio system itself. In the golden age, stars weren't just actors, they were corporate products, carefully built and fiercely protected. A star like Joan Crawford was a multi-million-dollar investment for MGM. Her image sold tickets, and anything that threatened that image was a threat to the studio's bottom line. Then came Confidential magazine, the notorious scandal sheet of the 1950s. It was the boogeyman of Hollywood, a publication that traded in the very secrets the studios spent fortunes to bury. And they had the ultimate story. Joan Crawford, America's glamorous mother figure, was a violent child abuser. A front-page spread was ready to go, a story that would have destroyed her career for good. But the studio machine did what it did best. It made the problem go away.
The old Confidential found out about it and was going to do a front-page spread, a series on it, and the old studio system managed to...
Kill it?
Yes. Yes.
Well, you couldn't kill a lot of things in Confidential.
Well, but...
They did.
Money speaks.
It was a cold, simple business decision. The studio bosses, the fixers, and the publicists weighed the cost of a payoff against the value of their star. The children were never part of the math. An entire industry, from the housekeepers scrubbing the floors to the executives in their leather chairs, built a wall of silence around her. They protected the monster not to save a woman, but to save a brand. In Hollywood, the pictures were all that mattered, and no one was willing to risk the box office for the children who were being broken just out of frame. But of all the horrors that took place in the Brentwood mansion, one night stands out as the moment the abuse escalated from cruel and violent to genuinely homicidal. This was the precipice, the point where Joan Crawford's alcoholism and rage converged into an attack so brutal it could only have one conclusion. For years, the abuse had been a terrifying pattern of beatings, deprivation, and psychological warfare. But on this night, with a 13-year-old Christina, The mask of motherhood didn't just slip, it was torn away to reveal the monster underneath, a monster who was no longer interested in punishment, but in annihilation. The catalyst was, as it so often was, a trivial matter of control. Joan, deep in her cups, disapproved of one of Christina's friendships. The argument quickly spiraled out of control, but this wasn't a typical screaming match. This was a drunken fury, unhinged and absolute. Joan lunged at her daughter, knocking her to the ground. Her hands, famous for their elegance on screen, wrapped around Christina's throat and squeezed. As Christina struggled for air, seeing the cold, blank rage in her mother's eyes, she knew this was different. This wasn't a beating she was meant to survive. It was an execution, stopped only by the chance arrival of Joan's secretary, whose presence shocked Joan out of her murderous trance.
And one time, you know, she tried to me. I mean, I am positive that if there was not somebody in the house, she would have me. She knocked me over, she was choking me. I thought I was going to die.
How old were you?
13.
That near-death experience on the floor of her mother's home became a grim turning point. For Christina, the illusion of any possible love or safety was shattered forever. She was no longer a daughter trying to earn her mother's affection. She was a survivor in enemy territory. The terror of that night forged a new resolve. She understood with chilling clarity that if her mother tried to attack her again, she would have to fight for her life, and she was prepared to do whatever it took. The dynamic in the house shifted. The beating stopped, not out of any remorse from Joan, but because her intended victim was no longer willing to be a victim.
And that was the last time we had any physical violence, because I knew that if it happened again, I would do everything in my power to protect myself.
In the aftermath, a desperate attempt was made to find help from the outside world. This was no longer a family squabble, it was attempted. The authorities were called, a juvenile officer dispatched to the pristine mansion to investigate. Here was the system's chance to intervene, to protect a child who was clearly in mortal danger. But Joan Crawford wasn't just any mother. She was a star, a pillar of the community, an institution. The officer didn't see a crime scene. He saw a domestic dispute with a celebrity. Instead of removing Christina from harm's way, he delivered a verdict that was just as suffocating as Joan's hands had been.
They called the juvenile authorities, and I had a long talk with the officer. He told me basically that I had to learn to grow up and survive until I was 18 and could leave the house.
The message was clear. You are on your own. The law, like the Hollywood insiders and the studio bosses, had no interest in disrupting the Joan Crawford narrative. Christina was handed a life sentence with a parole date, her 18th birthday. The physical violence may have ended, but it was replaced by a Cold War, a daily psychological battle for survival against a woman who had tried to kill her, with the full, implicit permission of a world that simply told a child to wait it out. After escaping the Brentwood mansion, a strange and uneasy truce settled over the years. Christina, now an adult, attempted to forge a new kind of relationship with her mother, one built on the fragile hope that the monster of her childhood had been tamed by time and age. But the dynamic of control and servitude never truly vanished. It simply changed its form. As Joan's health declined and her star faded, Christina was pulled back into the orbit of her mother's needs, no longer as a victim to be punished, but as a prop to maintain the fading illusion of Joan Crawford, the glamorous matriarch. She became a caretaker, a stand-in, an adult still tasked with cleaning up her mother's messes.
I was very much a caretaker for her. I stood in when she was too sick or too drunk to make appearances.
This role reversal came with an unspoken, desperate hope that in her vulnerability, Joan might finally acknowledge the past, that she might offer the one thing Christina craved more than any inheritance, an apology. It was the dream of every abused child, the fantasy that the parent will one day see the pain they caused and express a shred of remorse. For Christina, this hope was the silent engine driving their fraught adult relationship. But Joan Crawford's narrative was a fortress, and she would defend it to her dying breath. Acknowledging the abuse was not just unthinkable, it was impossible. To do so would be to admit her entire life was a lie.
Nope, she never did. It was as though it didn't happen.
Did you ever discuss it? Would you ever say, Mom, why?
I tried, and she said the past is the past, let it go.
The final definitive answer came after Joan's death in 1977. Any lingering hope for a posthumous peace, a private reconciliation, was obliterated by Joan's last will and testament. It was her final performance, a carefully scripted act of psychological warfare delivered from beyond the grave. This wasn't just about money. It was a public declaration of erasure, a final calculated blow designed to invalidate her children's experiences and cement her own version of history forever. The cruelty was not in the disinheritance itself, but in its cold public pronouncement.
I believe it said something to the effect that I leave nothing to my daughter Christina or my son Christopher for reasons that are well known to them.
With those words, Joan wasn't just cutting her children out of her fortune. She was attempting to cut them out of the truth. The phrase "for reasons that are well known to them" was the ultimate gaslighting, a parting shot that framed her victims as the guilty parties. It was this final betrayal, this absolute refusal to acknowledge their reality even in death, that served as the catalyst. Joan had tried to have the last word, but in doing so, she handed Christina the motivation to tell the whole story, ensuring that the reasons, once known only to them, would soon be known to the entire world. Joan Crawford's will was meant to be an epitaph, a final, unassailable word written in stone. Instead, it became a preface, the public announcement of her children's disinheritance, with its cruel, gaslighting justification, set off a firestorm of speculation. But much of the sympathy fell not with the disowned children, but with the memory of the sainted movie star. Christina found herself in an impossible position, forced to publicly defend herself against the ghost of her mother and the narrative Joan had spent a lifetime perfecting. After years of silent endurance, this final posthumous attack was one provocation too many.
There was a lot of sort of nasty, why does she disinherit her children, whatever. And I got tired of it. I really got tired of always having to explain, always having to defend myself. And I thought, I'm just going to sit down and tell the truth.
And so she did. Released in 1978, Mommy Dearest was not just a book. It was a cultural detonation. It landed on a society completely unprepared to see behind the curated facade of celebrity, let alone confront the ugly realities of child abuse. While critics and Hollywood insiders initially dismissed it as a bitter, vengeful screed, the book's wildfire success was fueled by something far deeper than a taste for scandal. It was powered by the quiet, painful recognition of millions.
The reason it was so successful is because it told the story of so many millions of people that had never had anything to do with show business or celebrity.
Mommy Dearest ripped the gag of silence off a topic that had been relegated to whispers in darkened rooms. For the first time, a book had given a name and a face, a famous, beautiful, and terrifying face, to the secret of the perfect family. It was a landmark, a cultural permission slip that allowed a taboo subject to enter the mainstream. The book's legacy wasn't just about wire hangers and midnight rages. It was about creating a language and a platform for survivors. It helped shift the cultural landscape from one of shame and secrecy to one where a conversation, however difficult, could finally begin. In her final act, Joan Crawford tried to have the last word, to erase her daughter's truth from history. What she did instead was ensure it would become immortal, a harrowing but necessary story that armed a generation with the courage to speak. It's a complex and devastating legacy, but one that undeniably changed the world by breaking a terrible silence. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.